Now life happens, things get stressful, cravings start kicking in, all sorts of variables, and then so it's August, we're comfortably into the second half of the year, and chances are that the goals or aspirations or New Year's resolutions that you set in January have fallen by the wayside. Now this often happens because, well, the reason as to why you set those goals up in the first place wasn't strong enough to hold you accountable when things got tough or when life started to happen. So let's say like you decided I'm going to quit smoking, and when you thought about it you were like, well yeah, I'm going to quit smoking, and it's because my mate John over there, he's decided he's going to quit smoking, and well, I've heard it's not particularly good for me, so fuck it, that's what I'm going to do, I'm going to quit smoking. Now life happens, things get stressful, cravings start kicking in, all sorts of variables, and then the reasons as to why you should start smoking again start to get stronger and stronger and bigger, and the reasons as to why you quit in the first place start getting smaller and smaller, or weaker and weaker, and before you know it you're smoking again, and then you justify it to yourself by going, well, I wasn't truly in it for me anyway, I was kind of doing it to help my mate John out, and whatever, and bullshit. Whereas let's say a doctor came to you, right, and he's like, fuck pal, I've got some horrible news, if you don't quit smoking you'll be dead in 4 months. And all of a sudden you're like, the fuck? Like 4 months I'm dead if I don't quit smoking? Now your reason for quitting smoking is massive, right? So it's all of a sudden like, well, it doesn't matter what life throws at you, how stressful things are, how much the cravings kick in, it doesn't matter, because on the other side of that it's death. So you start smoking again, you're dead. So you're like, well, it doesn't matter, I can handle anything that comes from here, because, well, what comes from there is way worse. So fucking, I'm not smoking. And this is something that I didn't truly understand until a few months ago, really. One of the goals that I have, that I put up on that board at the beginning of the year, was to own a supercar before my 31st birthday. And initially it was like, well, why do I want it? And pretty simple, it's badass. Who doesn't want a supercar, right? So that was kind of the justification for that goal. And it wasn't until things started getting tougher, or life started to happen, that I started to justify why I didn't need a supercar. And it was like, well, do you need a supercar? It's impractical, it costs a lot of money, insurance is ridiculous, oh my god, have you seen the fuel price? Like all these things, right? And you start justifying to yourself why you don't need a supercar. And then the work that's needed to be done in order to achieve that goal starts slipping, and the 2 hours of personal development that you started at the beginning of the year, for example, starts becoming 1 hour, then no hours. And the time that you spent on social media, it starts to become 1 hour, 2 hours, etc. And all of a sudden, before you know it, you've given up on that goal altogether, or you've parked it on the side because, well, it's an impractical goal. Like, what's the point? You don't need a supercar. But it wasn't until I started digging deeper and I started, like, I put the brakes on a little bit, and I was like, right, hang on a second. It's badass to own a supercar, but what's the real reason why I want a supercar? And then it started like clicking, and this took some time, like an embarrassingly long time, unfortunately. But I then started identifying why I wanted a supercar, and it was like, well, we've been in a position where we've had a lot of money, and then we had no money, and we came to the UK with literally a suitcase of clothing and started again. So we know what it feels like to go from like being well off to literally struggling, like deciding whether you put fuel in the car or you feed yourself, kind of thing. So, and I'm not trying to say, oh, we've had it hard, like there's people out there that have had it way worse, but I don't need to go any further along that journey to know that that's not where I fucking want to be. So where we've been was enough to scare the bejesus out of me and ensure that I don't go there again. And that's where I started identifying that the supercar thing was actually a thing for me, because it's like, it's not about owning a supercar. The supercar is the end result, like it's the nice to have. But the true meaning behind it is that I don't want to be in a position where I have no money again, or that we're struggling and we don't know how to make ends meet and stuff like that. So in order for me to own a supercar, I need to be financially secure or financially well off. In order to do that, I have to be debt free, blah 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 blah, whatever. And you start piecing all of these pieces together to then make like a chain of events that will get you to own a supercar. So it's not about driving a nice car, it's about ensuring that I don't go back to where I was that one time. And like, you start feeling that emotion, and that it just scares the shit out of me, right? So it's like, I just know I don't want to be there again. So you take that fear and you then mix it with, like for me, a driving factor, which is rage, aggression, all like the dark side stuff, right? Because I don't get driven by puppies and rainbows. That's not going to get me out of bed in the morning. What gets me out of bed is sheer rage, aggression, you name it, kind of thing. So I take that and I then angle it towards everyone who did me wrong, or said I wouldn't be something, or said I couldn't do something, or bullied me at school, or bullied me outside of school. It doesn't matter, right? You take it and you angle it to that. Now all of a sudden you've got this ball of fucking, I don't know what, or this concoction of something or other that's fucking massive, and it doesn't matter what comes up, you're going to chuck that to the side and you're going to do whatever needs to be done to get back on track to get that goal. Because like for me, nothing excites me more than the thought of rolling up to somewhere where all of these people who were once, let's just call them dickheads to me, this is where sat or stood or whatever the case may be, and I roll up in a supercar, I just flip open the door and I give them a massive fuck you without even having to actually say anything, because the supercar does the talking for me. Like for me, I like subtle shit like that. So that combination is enough to make me do whatever needs to be done in order to get to where I want to be. And it's not because the supercar is like the ultimate thing, it's just because the supercar represents wealth, stability, freedom, financial success, etc., etc. All the things that we once didn't have that scare the shit out of me. So it's like me getting as far away from that shit as I can and doing whatever needs to be done to ensure that that happens. So that's what the supercar represents, and that's why when now, it doesn't matter what comes up or what distractions there are, they fall by the wayside until such time as I've done what needs to be done in order to then ensure that that supercar is something that I can get before my 31st birthday. Then I go and I deal with the other shit, like I go play PlayStation or YouTube or fucking Instagram, Facebook, etc. So it's just finding that why, that digging deep enough to understand that why and ensure that it's bigger than any excuse, any distraction, because that's when you start achieving goals. When your why is not big enough and there's no emotion tied to it and there's no real meaning behind it, that's when the excuses will soon outweigh the reason as to why you need to be where you want to be. So I found this worked really well for me. If you're someone who's having a tough time following through on your goals or New Year's resolutions, give it a go and see how it works out for you. On the other hand, you might think it's a load of shit. Truth is, I give no